On Dub Zone, unbeatable, City seal their fourth premiership after running rampant in the West. Mariners coach Emily Husband joins us ahead of their final home elimination against Canberra. And can the Reds notch their first ever finals win as they tackle Western United? Hello and welcome to Dub Zone. I'm Grace Gill and joining me today are A-League's commentator Teo Pellizzeri. Teo, great to see you.
Great to see you, Grace.
And Teresa Polias, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
So we've seen out the regular season of the A-League. Favourite moment from the weekend, Teo? I'll start with you.
We're looking at a potential top 10 goals where 4 or 5 might be free kicks, and I think you've got to add Bethany Gordon's free kick for Canberra United against the Wanderers to the list.
Definitely.
Not a bad one as well. And T, yours? Favourite moment from the weekend?
My favourite moment was seeing Melissa Barbieri soak up Melbourne City's and hers achievement of going through the season undefeated. We're talking about a journey woman. She's been through pretty much every era of the domestic game, and it gave me goosebumps seeing her, get involved and enjoy that achievement.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to look past some of those results from Melbourne City. Speaking of Melbourne City, let's have a look at some of those post-match reactions from Friday night.
An undefeated home and away campaign is complete for Melbourne City. Unbeatable through 23 games. 16 wins, 7 draws, 0 defeats.
We're going to celebrate this and then get right back to it. So yeah, next goal on the list.
Look, words can't describe the feelings that are going through my body at the moment. It's been an absolute pleasure coaching them so far. And one trophy down and to go undefeated, I couldn't have ever imagined that. I think after the season, maybe we might enjoy it a little bit more, but we've still got a lot of football to play.
Yes, very special scenes there, and a big congratulations once more to Melbourne City. And T, you've been part of some very successful Sydney FC teams. This achievement, 23 games undefeated, longest ever season that the A-League's had, a comment on the accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. Given that it's a longer season now, they did it over 23 rounds. I mean, that is just incredible, and I feel like it's a closer season. The teams, anyone can beat anyone, and for them to hold out and go through it undefeated, and yet, like I said, extraordinary.
They trailed in 8 different games.
Yeah.
This undefeated streak was on the line numerous times. Safe to say in this trip to Perth it wasn't, because they scored in the very 3rd minute of the game. Alexia Apostolakis had an amazing match playing as a left-back. 2 assists from corners. Briley Henry makes it 2. And that is not a replay of the first goal, T. They had that set-piece routine with Taylor Otto making the near-post run, absolutely singing, and then the 4th goal before half-time meant there was no chance of a Perth comeback.
Yeah, and some of the football they played was unbelievable, and you get the feel that they're just extremely confident heading into finals, so scary stuff.
Well, a few years ago as well, we know that Melbourne City had such a strong team with some really experienced older players, the likes of Steph Catley, Jess Fishlock, some of the best players in the world. What we're seeing now is a young host of talent coming through. So while the football is still the same, there's a different approach to that development, Teo. And when we talk about young players, the ability that City have to produce such quality, talented youngsters.
I want to isolate the 4th goal in particular, because yes, we can talk about City's resources and their recruiting network, but this build-up here, 14 passes, Perth puts a shin on the ball. We then see 9 more passes building up to the goal. It's Laura Hughes, 1 cap, Alexia Apostolakis, young Matilda, Carly Rossback and fringe Matilda, Leah Davidson, a handful of caps, and then Letitia McKenna, might not be on the long list of 50 if the Matildas were naming a squad tomorrow, might be sneaking onto the long list of 50, and then Holly McNamara adds the finishing touch. This to me says, yes, you've got the security of a Taylor Otto at the back, Mariana Speckmeyer's out, but Melbourne City are showing what's possible with a core of Australian players, many of who they recruited from struggling teams, and yes, you can say there's the City halo around it, but I think other teams would watch this football and say, actually, what we've got in our backyard, it doesn't hinge on dollars, it doesn't hinge on imports, it hinges on how we want to play our football, how we train our players, and Michael Matriciani even talked about the installation of the patterns of play that leads to a team goal like that.
Yeah, it's all about those patterns. You can see the movement out there and the understanding they each have of every individual's role in the team, and it's beautiful football to watch, and the players at City are learning how to play the game very well and how to learn each position, not just their own, but in a system, and that's really impressive.
And it's not just, I know that people love the Matildas for what they represent, but at some point, you know, it's also an education about loving the game of football, and a goal like that makes you love how football is played. And I can only hope that it is a blueprint for, you know, all of these players to graduate to national team level at some point in their careers, but also to play football like that for our national teams.
Definitely.
Well, Michael Matriciani should be very pleased with his achievements and working with such a wonderful group of players. Let's hear what he had to say after this one.
This is something we've been working on a lot for the last probably 6-7 weeks. Our little combination play in and around the box, especially when teams are sitting 7, 8, 9 players behind the ball, how we can sort of unlock that and break it down. And we've been getting better and getting close, and tonight that was just a super goal. So very, very pleasing, yes. For someone to come back from 3 ACLs, you never quite know, but her mentality from day one when I walked in the door, the way she did the little exercises and the little details was absolutely phenomenal, and she's a winner. And we can see it on the pitch. We've obviously nursed her and managed her and played her off the bench a lot in the beginning, and then sort of we manage her off 60, 70 minutes. I try and give her a little bit of advice here or there with some movements, but I think the quality of her biggest quality is that she wants to improve, and whatever coach coaches her in the future with the national team, she's a quick learner, so she's a very intelligent footballer. She'll take that and continue to add layers and layers of different concepts to her game and make her better and better.
Well, Holly McNamara, what a play. Great footballer. Her water throwing abilities might need a little bit of work looking at that. But she's a player that we know has come back and overcome so much adversity, Teo. And 15 goals, 17 matches, and started just 9 of those games. Played 800 odd minutes. And this is a player that when you compare, as you mentioned earlier, 2,000 minutes sort of on average for a full season. She's played just over 800.
A goal every 57 minutes, T. And Melbourne City need a lot of credit for how they've handled her comeback, because it was flagged in pre-season, don't expect to see her till January. Things actually got ahead of schedule. She came back in mid-December, and she's come back at top gear. There's been a betting in process, but when you're Holly McNamara, even coming back from an injury, you look unbelievable.
Yeah, it's guaranteed goals every match. She's been fantastic coming back, and I think the way that City have managed her return has just made her more confident to be out there and loving the game, and it's great to see her also have that competitive edge and driving everyone out there.
There was a point of controversy in this game, and you were calling this one, Teo. Rebecca Stott, there was a penalty, a handball, and it looked to be a pretty obvious handball on the goal line. Talk us through this moment.
So the referee has discretion about how intentional it is to stop a goal-bound shot with a hand, but Rebecca Stott gets a yellow here. Obviously a red means that she's suspended for the first leg of the semi-final, regardless of who Melbourne City play. Was Stott a little bit lucky, or do you think the referees made the right call giving a yellow card? I mean, is the context of the game that they were already 2-0 up a factor? If it's the last minute and it's 0-0, I mean, does that factor into the referee's discretion, or does the act alone mean that it's only a yellow and not a red?
Yeah, I think every factor has to come into that, and I mean, it was pretty close range. Yes, the arm was away from the body. I'm happy with the yellow. For me, I think a red would be pretty harsh in the situation, in the context of that game.
And she's such a nice person as well. The other game across the weekend was a special one, less so in terms of results, because by this point Melbourne Victory knew that City had already clinched the premiership played, but it was Melbourne Victory who did get the result over Brisbane Roar. And in terms of momentum, this is where it needed to continue for Melbourne Victory. They did get the job done in the end without Emily Gilnick, who was nursing a little bit of Achilles soreness, Teresa.
Yeah, I think they're just a team that's great at getting the job done, no matter how well they're playing, and come finals, having experienced that and them getting the job done, even when, you know, they're possibly not in the best of form. I think they're actually in pretty good form at the moment. They're scoring goals now, and like I said, I think they're City's biggest threat in this final series.
Club undefeated record streaks up to 13, I think, T, which has gone under the radar because Melbourne City's gone the entire season. But in any other season, again, Melbourne Victory would be finishing top of the league, and we would be celebrating the fact that they haven't lost since they were defeated by Brisbane the first time they met head-to-head. So they basically ran through the entire table with that draw where, let's not forget, it was one of the games where Melbourne City had to come from behind to get an equaliser.
Yeah, and look, in their history in finals, they've just been able to find a way to win. So come the second week of finals, it's going to be really interesting.
Well, up until this game, Emily Gilnick was vying for that golden boot as well, and she would have been chomping at the bit to try and catch Holly McNamara. She was rested, precautionary, with a bit of Achilles soreness. She had an arm around Ella O'Grady giving her advice. It was really lovely to see. But how important is she to their finals campaign?
Yeah, she would have been gutted not to be able to be out there to challenge for the golden boot there, but I think common sense prevailed here, and she's a wonderful person, Em Gilnick, and you can see her giving great advice there, and how invested O'Grady is in listening to her, and I think on or off the pitch, she's invaluable to that squad.
Well, it was a special game because we farewelled both Marielle Ecker and Keely Richards in goal, but someone who gave themselves their own marching orders was Momo Hayashi Teo, who picked up a red card, a straight red, in the middle of the field. She received for, I think, making contact with the referee after this challenge with Alana Murphy. I
mean, it's disappointing from the point of view that Momo's been the one thing, or one of a few things, that Brisbane fans can take out of the season and say what an incredible, individual campaign. But she's going to have to start next season suspended. Now, at the time that we're recording this, the notice of how long that suspension hasn't been announced. T, you'd think it's two games probably, but I mean, even missing round 1 and 2 of a new campaign, having that hanging over you through your pre-season preparation, it's less than ideal for the Brisbane Roar, given she is contracted and she is coming back next season, but she's going to have to start it on the sidelines. Yeah,
I think a show of frustration there, which is quite uncharacteristic for Momo, and multiple game suspension there, which is not ideal. Given how well Brisbane were able to start this season, they'd be hoping to hit the ground running again into next season. So, a bit disappointing.
Well, a player who stood up in another big way again was captain Kayla Morrison. Let's hear from her after this one.
I think definitely starting today, we needed to start building that momentum. So bringing, the 3 points home, that was going to be really important. And then having the week off. We'll still play a game next weekend, Jeff. We do get 2 days off, which is like the first 2 days off we've ever had. But we'll play a game on the weekend, and then hopefully that'll keep us rolling into finals.
Now, what about you touched on your bitter rivals in Melbourne City. No doubt you've got a lot of respect for them and what they've done this season. But is the pressure a little bit more on them, given what they've done, and perhaps an underdog like Melbourne Victory could upset things come finals time?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely be feeling the pressure. We're a finals football team. I think it's where we thrive. We like those games where you've got to grind it out and get a little dirty. But if we are to play Melbourne City in the final, I think it'll be a really good one. Hopefully we'll come out on top.
Oh, she's just such a delight to hear from, isn't she? But when we look to Victory's final chances, because you mentioned this, T, that they've just gotten over, sort of little jammy results, they've just gotten through. How do they carry that into finals?
They've been a team that's always done that, and I think there's so much merit with what Kayla Morrison said there. I've experienced that myself in finals where, they seem down and out and they just
find a way.
Up and find a way. And I think they're super confident heading into the final series. I think against City this season, they probably were unlucky in at least one of the games to lose, and they'll fancy their chances.
I mean, it's if Adelaide win, Victory gets Adelaide, and over 2 legs, we've seen Adelaide score against them but lose both games. So they'll watch the first final and then watch the second one, knowing that if Adelaide wins, it's Adelaide no matter what. But I'm very intrigued as to which opponent. Victory, teams never tell you who they would want to play in the finals, T. So maybe if you're Melbourne Victory, who would you rather potentially face? Would it be the Mariners? Would it be Canberra? Or would it be Adelaide? Because the only team they can't get from the elimination finals, if Western United win, they definitely play City because they're the 6th seed. So of the other 3 teams, who would Victory most prefer to see?
In terms of a team that kind of complements the way they play, and I think they'd get the better of Canberra the most out of those 3 teams.
Well, after the regular season all said and done, let's have a look at how the ladder shook out. It was Melbourne City undefeated, invincibles at the top there. Those top 3 secured, locked in, we knew that. And then Central Coast, Canberra United and Western United rounding out the top 6. A lot of movement between those 3 teams, and just over onto Brisbane Roar. Sydney FC, for the first time in the 17-year history of the competition, We're without finals, Wellington Phoenix, Perth Glory, Newcastle Jets and of course Western Sydney. And a question without notice to both of you in terms of the biggest surprise across the course of the season. Either who are you surprised made it into finals, who are you surprised dropped out and underperformed perhaps across the course of the season? And
I mean, the obvious one's going to be Sydney missing out. But that aside, I was surprised to see how much Brisbane Roar capitulated from that first half of the season where they were the best team to watch and you just thought they were going to go on to win the minor premiership. And yeah, it was disappointing to see them slide so much.
I must admit, I'm a little bit surprised at the points tally for the last place team, the Wanderers. Not so much that they ended up there, but I think that at times, they could have turned losses into draws and draws into wins. And same for Newcastle. I mean, I feel like we sat on this set praising how Newcastle played their football all season and then the results just didn't stack up and they've got a second last place finish to show for it. So
it's all about results, isn't it?
In terms of who made the six, I'm actually not quite as surprised. I did tip Canberra to finish in sixth place pre-season. So I did see that one coming, but I've got to say that the bottom two, it's frustrating and I can only hope for better days ahead.
Well, exciting elimination finals coming up. Let's take a look at what's cooking on socials with Narlene Mastu, thanks to Ninja.
I'm Narlene Masto with What's Cooking on Socials and in the world of women's football. Brought to you by the Ninja Woodfire Outdoor Oven, which can turn any space into an outdoor kitchen. Former A-League's boss Joe Montemuro guided Lyon to a 2-1 win over Arsenal in the first leg of the Women's Champions League semi-final. That victory comes at a time when Montemuro's name is being floated for that Matilda's coaching job. When asked about the growing speculation, he said he does intend to see out his contract with the European Giants for as long as they want him. The second semi-final leg will kick off next Monday with the winner of that matchup facing either Chelsea or Barcelona in the final. Now, Matilda star Alex Chidiac scored an absolute cracker of a goal against Brisbane Roar and was feeling the love from the fans. We know Chids is a self-described swag queen and there was even a sign letting us know that she's in the actual definition of the word. There were even some more random signs to get Chids' attention and she was absolutely loving it. New Zealand and Ninja A-League legend Annalie Longo announced her retirement from football in Wellington Phoenix's final game of the season. She left the field to a standing ovation at Porirua Park, embraced departing head coach Paul Temple, and soon confirmed it was in fact her last dance.
Yeah, that is the last game for me. It's obviously, conditions here, the wind, the rain and the Phoenix, they say, and we turned it on again here in Wellington. So, proud of the performance. I think, obviously, the energy in the second half was good. Took me to come off to the pitch for the girls to score the goal, so they don't need me.
What a legacy she's left behind. Just an incredible leader for both the club and country. So we wish her all the very best in the next chapter of her life. My question back to the Dub Zone crew is, how would you sum up the impact Longo has made on the women's game?
Oh, thanks, Narlene. And what a career she has. Flea, as she's affectionately known, a former teammate of yours, Teresa.
Yes, 2013, I was lucky enough to play alongside Flea. And, sad to see her go out. She's going out on a high. I think she was had a fantastic season and, over 130 caps for New Zealand. She's, left an imprint on the game domestically and internationally. So, sad to see her go out. But I don't think this will be the last we see of Flea.
Players that come from different eras and end at the beginning of another one are always fascinating, aren't they? Because Longo, I think, has had a career typical of many New Zealand players in that the only option to play professionally and improve your football is to leave, whether it was to Australia, Sydney and Victory, but also overseas. And now she's leaving behind a generation that are coming through at Wellington, and that's where they get their first go at it, and hopefully Auckland into the future as well.
Yeah, and I think she's left a lasting legacy on all those youngsters in Wellington as well, and they speak so highly of her as well.
I think her character as well, when she finished the game, and a lot of players didn't actually know that was her last game. The attention, she didn't want the focus on her, and I thought that was a really special way.
Absolutely.
So much so, I can tell you that the Phoenix staff had to run back into the rooms and write a media release because even they didn't know. So one thing we definitely know about Annalie Longo is she can keep a secret.
Oh, well, what a very special player, and we wish her all the very best in her retirement. Well, we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by the Mariners boss in Emily Husband. Em, back-to-back finals, second year back in the competition, second year back in finals. Congratulations. Your reflections on the season so far? Still a bit to go, but your reflections so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just obviously first and foremost so proud and grateful for the playing group that I've got. I think they've been phenomenal this year, and we've played some really, really good football. I think the epitome of our season this year has probably been that we haven't taken the chances that we've created, which was probably topped off by the game versus Newcastle this weekend. But for the girls to again continue to limit the opposition's chances and create so many at the opposite side, like, it's really pleasing to see. And like I said, really, really proud and really grateful of the team that I've had this year to work with. And they're a great group of individuals as well as footballers.
And Em, you've got such a diverse squad, but it seems like your youngsters are outshining everyone. How have you been able to manage them so well to be able to perform so well at this point?
Look, I'm going to put that down to them. At the end of the day, like, as a coach, you try and manage what you can. But the younger players in Fuller and Razzie and Peter, like, all of them are so desperate to want to do well. Obviously not just for the club, but for themselves and for the national teams as well. So they know they have a real hunger and desire to learn and want to be better and improve. And it shows on the pitch. And for a coach, it's unbelievable to work with players with that sort of desire and energy to want to get better and improve. And I think all of them have got really, really good futures ahead of them.
Em, I wanted to ask specifically about Tiana Fuller, because you and I probably both watched the National Youth Championships for under-16s and saw a lot of amazing players, of which she was one. But what's the difference between her taking to the Ninja A-League the way she has and others who have maybe just strived to get a debut or strive to be a train-on? What is it that you saw and you identified as someone who was ready to have the volume of game time that she's had as a 16-year-old this season?
Well, she's the one who's earned it. Like every player that you bring in your squad, you always hope and anticipate that they're going to play their very best football for you, but not everybody always does. And with players, they'll earn their own game time. And Fuller has been, doing such great things in training, whether it's taking players on, continuously having the confidence, taking on information. And when you see them doing things week in, week out in training, you know that they're ready for the game, and then you step them up to the game. And again, when they continuously showing good habits on the ball and off the ball as well, that there's a real makings of a good promise there. And like I said, it's all down to these individuals and to these players. As coaches, we're here to help and guide them, but they're the ones who've got to get on the pitch and actually do it. And, you provide them with that platform, and it's up to them to then perform.
And it's finals football now, so I was wondering, how will you mentally prepare the squad, particularly those youngsters we've spoken about, to handle such a high-pressure match in the elimination final?
We've talked a lot towards the back end of this season. We've spoken a lot about our game management, and that's both coming from behind and holding on to a lead as well. And I think that'll be really, really important coming into the finals. So there's definitely been large elements of that. But we've taken one game at a time the whole season. We've never looked too far ahead. So we'll continue to do that going into the finals as well. And it's about being in the moment and taking the moments in the moment, for this group. And like I said, they've done such a tremendous job this year, proving, people wrong countless times. And I don't think, again, second year in, anybody backed us to be in the top six, but here we are.
And Emma, a word on your opposition. Canberra, you've had a win and a draw against them across the season. I know you're focusing on yourself, but what do you expect from this Canberra side?
Yeah, again, Ant's done a phenomenal job at Canberra. You look at how well they've done this year. It's been fantastic to see. You want to see every game being as competitive as possible. We know that they've got, a hard-working midfield. They've got pace going forward. Obviously, give players any chances around the box, whether that's Eddie and Keane, whether that's Michelle Heyman or Markowski. Like, they've got so many players there that are willing to step up and take opportunities, and I think that's been a massive reason as to why they've been so successful this season.
I wanted to ask about how you'll set the team up. You don't have to show us all your cards, but the question of Taryn King's return from injury and Taylor Ray at centre-back. You must be thrilled with how Taylor has taken to that position, but is this a matter of it's always been a contingency plan, or is Taylor actually now your first choice centre-back because Taryn is only so far into her comeback from injury?
Look, Taylor's done a wonderful job. Again, it's just another form of adversity that the team have got to deal with this year. We've had one fit centre-back in Jess Nash from, round 8, after losing Brie Riley and Ash Irwin to long-term injuries. So to get to this point in the season with one fit centre-back, I think it's a really good showing of where the girls have been. As for Taryn, she's on her journey, obviously still coming back, and we're managing her as we see fit. And it's been a long journey for Taryn, and I'm so proud that she's been able to step back on the pitch with us this season. So she's invaluable to us on and off the field. So we're just really glad and happy to have her back.
And speaking of players who've had injury battles, Izzy Gomez having, of course, returned for the latter stages of the season. We on the outside are seeing someone who we believe is on the trajectory for Matilda's selection. But what are you seeing internally, both in terms of the development of her football, how she's responded to your coaching and maybe the roles you've given her, but also throwing in rehabbing an injury as part of that too?
Yeah, I think obviously she was really disappointed to have that setback, again, in the manner that it happened as well. And you never want to see players go through injury at any point, but I think Gomez would have had an even better year than what she has done if she'd have been fit for all of it. But for her, she's managed herself really, really well. It was always about making sure that she was 100% fit before then pushing her and forcing her into anything. And we very much went on how she was feeling and what she needed. And for me, I see a player in there who, if you unleash her a little bit higher up, she has a really great threat of in behind, but also of winning the ball higher up the pitch. So it's great to have that flexibility to use Gomez almost wherever the team needs her. If we need something a little bit more going forward, we can play her higher up, or if we need a little bit more robustness in front of our back four, then we can play her there as well. So that's one thing I always ask of the players, is that they're readily available to be played wherever they're needed. And we've had so many players this year step up in different positions and help us out, and Gomez is one of those.
And last one from me. I don't know if you know this, but Sarah Langman has played 103 games and holds the league record for most games without playing in a final. So I'm sure this weekend is massive for her. But last season you were changing your keepers. You went with Casey in finals. What does it mean for Sarah to finally get her name off the list and play that first final?
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be absolutely elated, and she's thoroughly deserved it this year. She's really stepped up, and she's put on some wonderful performances, and kept us in games a lot of the time. So players mature at different rates, and I think this year we've seen a really, really good trajectory of Sarah, in multiple areas of her game. So it's been really pleasing to see, and obviously, again, I know the whole team will be absolutely thrilled for her, and as we are as a staff as well.
Well, and we really appreciate you taking the time, and all the very best for Sunday's game.
Thank you very much.
Yes, there is Emily Husband. Great for her to take the time to have a chat, and what a massive game it is going to be on Sunday.
Huge game, and great insight from Em Husband on her team, and I think they're in form now, so it'll make for a really, really interesting match.
They have been a fascinating team. I mean, the results team, we've seen the Izzy Gomez injury did create a bit of a crater within the season where they could have potentially missed the finals, but we've seen them steady, and it's amazing how versatile Em Husband has been, whether it's been leaning on Nunn and Pennock, the older imports, or at times just turning to the youngsters, Fuller, Rasmussen, Trimmis, unleashing them and letting them attack. And they've found different ways to win, and that's what's made them such an impressive team this year.
Well, let's have a look at that finals tree to see what's coming up here. And we know we've just spoken about that one, Central Coast Mariners up against Canberra on Sunday afternoon. The other game as well, Adelaide, Western United. We'll break that one down a little bit more. And the Melbourne teams, they get a week off or a week or two off, which is nice to rest and recover. But when we do turn our attention to the opposition team, and Em didn't say too much, she spoke well and spoke glowingly of Canberra. Canberra, fair to say, there was a point in the season where there was question marks of if they were going to make the finals. And they're a team that arguably have struggled to find the back of the net, but what they have found is themselves in the top 6.
Yeah, and they've found a way to win big games, and they did that in the last few rounds, and credit to them for that. And I think Teo brought up some fantastic stats last week about Canberra as opposed to last season, and when you look at it like that, they've scored less goals, was it?
Yes, but they've conceded even less.
Yeah, so that just shows from last season they made improvements where they needed to. We did have a lot of questions about them defensively last season. I think they've made a lot of amends there, but they are, I think, dark horses in this final series.
Well, we look to the Canberra team, Teo, and we know Michelle Heyman's name is always up in lights, but who do you see as a bit of a dark horse that might be able to turn this game in Canberra's favour?
Well, I'm intrigued as to how Liz Anton could leave to move overseas. They move Emma Robers, nominally a midfielder, into centre-back, and they've won all 3 games.
Yeah.
So this must, I mean, credit to Emma Robers for taking a new position and playing it well. But to me, my impression is it's the midfield cover that Canberra give their entire defence, from Darcy Malone and Bethany Gordon.
Yeah.
So tell us about their partnership and what they've done to be able to adjust on the fly to losing in Anton, someone who you might recall when we named our halfway point team of the season. I had her in there because she was that important to Canberra's defence.
Honestly, I could have had her in my team very easily, and I sort of kicked myself that I didn't include her. But yeah, I think they're fortunate to have a bit of depth in their midfield, and they've got Bethany Gordon back and healthy and playing very well. Obviously, Mary Stanich-Flood has been fantastic. Darcy Malone has stepped up this season. So given that they've had that depth in the midfield to bring players in a starting role, and Robers, she's that kind of player that can, like a Taylor Ray at the Mariners, she's that kind of player that can step in and do a really good job at the back there. So she's done that, and yeah, I think it's kind of worked a treat for Canberra.
I also want to touch on the goalkeeping situation, because you mentioned Sarah Langman when talking to Anne, but Sally James, what a season she's had for Canberra United.
This is someone who's always been in the plans of the national team. We saw her in 2022 start all 3 games ahead of Chloe Lincoln, who was a bit younger then, at the Under-20 World Cup. So she's always been someone that there's been a hope that we would see performances and a season like this, T. And I mean, she got stuck behind Morgan Aquino at Perth last season, who had the season of her life and turned that into a move to the United States. Well, now Sally James is showing us what she can do.
Yeah, I think she was a bit unlucky. The places she travelled, others outperformed her a bit, but she's back at Canberra now, and I think all she needed was a bit of stability, consistency, obviously, in the lineup. And yeah, she's come in leaps and bounds, had a really solid season, has kept Canberra in the game. In a lot of those tight matches, I think she's a player that you have to give credit to for where they are.
If it goes to penalties, which keeper do you want? Which keeper do you want?
Nah, look, I can't pick. I think, on the day, may the best team win, and, whoever steps up and does the right thing. But I think this game can potentially go to penalties.
Well, speaking of on-field advantages, home ground, Mariners, how much does that play into it?
Yeah, I think it will, to be honest. I think they'll get, it's a tight-knit community up on the Central Coast, and I think they'll get quite a good crowd out for such a big game.
The qualifying final, or semi-final, that they played against Sydney FC last season, the first leg, they lost at 1-0, but it was a 5,500 crowd, and they were just yearning for a goal that never came for them. And you felt as though they outplayed Sydney and found a way to lose 1-0 that day. If they can get something similar to that sort of atmosphere, it would be, again, a pretty magical experience to have.
Yeah, and it's an amazing achievement for them to have secured another home elimination final. And I think, the crowd got the taste of it last season, and I think they'll be back in droves again this weekend.
So, quick tip, Central Coast Mariners, Canberra, Teresa,
I'm going to say Mariners on penalties.
Well, I will contradict. I think Canberra will find a way.
Okay. All right, well, let's turn our attention to the other elimination final, because Adelaide United secured that home final. They're at Coopers Stadium up against Western United, and Adelaide locked in that top 3 position. They knew a couple of weeks ago exactly what was going on. And T, what do you make of the complexion of this game and these 2 teams?
Yeah, look, Adelaide, I think, have really earned the right this season to have that home final. This player right here that we're seeing, Erin Healy, has been fantastic. Although missing a little bit in these final rounds, I think it's more squad management that they've had the luxury of being able to do lately. But I think, another home final, I think similar to the Mariners, I think they'll get a good crowd, at home for this match. And they'll be ready for it.
In many ways, this has been Adelaide's best season, a points tally, T, that would have finished top of the league last campaign. So even though they've lost all 4 games against the top 2, they've put themselves in the best possible position by really beating the rest of the league when they needed to. I mean, I'm intrigued by this Western United clash, because they did only meet a couple of weeks ago, but Adelaide, as we saw there, they were already mathematically locked into 3rd. Really, that was them winning away against a Western United team who've really, they had a 4th spot and the chance for a home final in their grasp, and they let it slip with a couple of losses. Well, a loss and a draw to Wellington. Yeah,
that's sort of what we've seen from Western a bit this season, just that inconsistency, home and away. So it's a bit of a lucky dip, I feel, for Western. I do feel like Adelaide are, at this point, in more control of their games. for a final, I think that bodes well for them.
Well, still speaking Adelaide for just a minute, we know that Fiona Wirtz and Erin Healy have been excellent for the Reds. At the other end of the field, Teo, we saw Zoe Toland go off with what looked to be a hammy injury last weekend. If she's unavailable, what do you make of that back line having to make a few changes?
It's really devastating for Toland, who was not part of the finals a couple of seasons ago and has steadily broken in since, to the point now where she has played 2,037 minutes. And really, only because she got subbed off here. Ella Tonkin, most minutes in the competition for Adelaide, 2,070. Adelaide's only two players over 2,000 minutes. And she picked up a cut over the eye, thus the bandage, but that's unrelated to the soft tissue injury that she's now suffered. And it is devastating for a young player who, I mean, Adrian Stenter at the start of the season said that this is someone who's had to work and battle just to get into the roster. And now she's played over 2,000 minutes of A-League women's football, and she's going to miss this final and is going to probably be touch and go to return this season, which is really upsetting. And you know, scenes like that are a little bit heartbreaking for really one of the players who's given her heart and soul to this Adelaide cause this season.
It is upsetting to see that. Her reaction says it all, but you know what I see from that is her players rallying around her as well, and you know she's had a fantastic season, and I don't know if she'll be out, you know, beyond this elimination final. Hopefully they can win for her and get back. But yeah, really disappointing for her.
So defensively, we saw Tiana Karambassis, you might remember her trying to defend Courtney Vine in that Mariners versus Sydney semi-final last season and doing a pretty good job of it. So the situation here, they sub on Karambassis for Toland, straight swap, or do you look at an Izzy Hodgson, Lucia Leon? Like, how would you move the magnets, and who would you back to come into what has been with Matilda McNamara and Ella Tonkin, a pretty solid back three that's given Lucia Leon up the right and Emily Hodgson up the left the freedom to be proper wing backs?
It's a tricky one because Lucia Leon's in such great form getting forward at the moment, but then she's got that experience at the back there. So, look, I guess the luxury is that Stenter has a choice here, and I think that he'll probably have a look at everyone, you know, through the week. But elimination finals can go into extra time as well. So I think having the option to change things throughout the match, later in the match as well, really is a positive for him.
Well, let's pivot and talk about Western United's defence, because of the top six, they have the leakiest defence, 46 goals they've conceded across the course of the regular season. How do they manage what has been a really firing Adelaide United attack?
Yeah, well, they've had a few unwanted blowouts in the season where, you know, really inconsistent defensively. So coming up against the likes of Erin Healy, you know, and on-fire Fiona Wirtz is kind of scary for them. And that's an area I really question Western, and I think they're going to have to really tighten things up for this match.
I think they embrace being the underdogs and back themselves in a shootout. We've seen them get into a couple this season, high-scoring games. They have one big asset in Catherine Zimmerman's experience on this stage. This is a player who, in addition to scoring in a grand final, scored in the finals last season against Newcastle. And that turned into a shootout as well. They got beaten 4-2 after extra time. But, I mean, I'm not sure there's a fix for this defence. I mean, do they go back to Chloe Lincoln? The fact we're even talking about chopping and changing the goalkeepers again right on the eve of finals kind of sums up why this unit hasn't found stability at any point this season.
Yeah, you mentioned them holding out, being the underdogs too, but that's the key. I think they're just, this week, really focusing on themselves defensively and being focused. I don't think it's a goalkeeper issue. I think it's a structural, tactical issue and focus issue at times. And things just crumble once, I guess, they miss their own opportunities in their front third and then the pressure's on and they just don't hold teams out. So
no, I think they embrace their weaknesses and they go for the shootout. Go for the shootout.
Losses,
gung ho, go attacking. I think, if anything, you want to score first and try to rattle Adelaide.
Yes,
and this is only the second final that Adelaide has ever played in 17 years of this competition, and they were absolutely overawed by the occasion back in 2022 against Melbourne Victory, where a couple of wily finals veterans like Leah Privatelli and Melina Reyes scored the goals and got victory through.
Well, for Western, they are good at creating chances, so if they can put one away early ahead of Adelaide, I think, that's got to be the strategy.
Well, you talk about scoring first, Teo, but it was Western United who did score first against Wellington Phoenix and couldn't hold on to the lead in what would have gifted them a home final. Do they have that ability to hold on, the game management, taking it all the way through, whether it's a first half goal or a second half goal? Wellington ultimately came back and took away what would have been a United home final.
This was a genuinely surprising watch, this game. The way the weather turned, the way the Phoenix came back after conceding and the resilience they showed. I understand the crowd was vocal and they would get the news about Annalie Longo after. And it was right off the back of the emotional moment of Annalie Longo being subbed out that Wellington scored the equaliser there. But the Western United defence team, I'm not sure really...
That's my argument.
whoever they've plugged in, though, whoever they've plugged in hasn't been able to stop the goals from flowing.
No, and you can give all the excuses, Teo, about emotions and all this, but we're talking about an elimination final here. So if they, that's what makes me question it. They couldn't handle it against the Phoenix. So going into it, their ship's a little shaky.
Well, Chloe Berryhill, formerly Lagazo, did go down in that game, subbed off, concerningly, because she's missed the last 2 final series for Western United. How serious, Teo, a concern is that for Western?
Well, Western have said it's just a cork, she'll be right to go. And both in terms of leadership presence, but also just the individual ability to score a goal, T. You can just imagine what would have been going through Chloe's head. I mean, obviously athletes know their bodies, but still, last home and away game, you've missed the last 2 final series.
Yeah.
This is back to the 2019 grand final.
What she can do in a final, so...
I mean, tell us about it.
Did you put this clip in, T?
I did not have any power as to put that in.
But when you talk about big game players, I still remember the 2016 Olympics when Lagazo hit the crossbar against Brazil and could have put us through to an Olympic semi-final, so close. But this is a big stage player, and Western United have missed her dearly the last 2 seasons.
They have, and we know statistically they're a much better team with her out there, obviously. And that strike there, she steps up in big games. So, they'll be hoping they've got her 100% back and healthy in this match.
Well, quick tip on this one. Western United, Adelaide United. Adelaide at home. T, I'll go to you first. Who's going to get this one?
I'm going to say Adelaide at home, advantage in good form.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a contrarian here. Adelaide, I think Adelaide do get the job done as well.
Now that the regular season is over, the Julie Dolan medal will be decided. Here's our very own Teo Pellizzeri walking us through exactly how it's decided.
Each regular season match in the Ninja A-League is voted on by an individual from 3 separate panels. The 3 panels contain technical members or former players, media representatives and match officials. Votes are collated from all panellists to establish a final 3-2-1 for each match. These 3-2-1 votes are then tallied up to award the Julie Dolan medal winner at the conclusion of the regular season.
Yes, some very good options to pick from for the Julie Dolan medal for the end of the season. And T, I'll come to you first on this one. Who do you think is going to take the top award?
My pick is Erin Healy, and the only question mark I have over that is just she's missed a few games of late. But yeah, she's been outstanding for Adelaide, and in a season where they've turned things around amazingly, I think, she's just been brilliant.
A lot of 3-vote performances, would you say, T? Any risk of teammates stealing votes off her, though?
Yeah, look, Chelsea Dorber's obviously been really, really good as well, but I think when it comes to that 3-point, her goal-scoring ability puts her ahead of everyone.
No, look, it's a very good shout. I'm going to choose Tamika Yallop, largely based on the front half of the season, but I also think Yallop historically is a very good poller in this award. As you know, it's not just the media, it's also the technical panel and the former players, where I think Tamika and what she does, maybe that they see, it even goes beyond what we in the media might see, particularly in a defeat or in a draw. Like when she scored a hat-trick in the 4-all draw, you'd think she's getting the 3 votes there for sure, but in that front half of the season, on her way to 13 goals for the campaign, I think she'll have a lot of votes in the bank, and it might just be a winning lead when you consider that she'll have the Wanderers game for 3 more right at the final, couple of rounds.
Well, both really good shouts, Healy and Yallop. I find it really hard to go past Holly McNamara in her goal-scoring form. Matilda's call-up, she is just in such startling form. So whether it be Holly, whether it be the 2 players you've mentioned as well, I think she's a pretty decent shout.
Is there a risk that you've got the assist leader in Lourdes Bosch, you've got the second-placed assist getter in Policina second, and you've got Letitia McKenna tied for 3rd? And a lot of these Melbourne City players have actually, in games where Holly Mack might have scored, sparked up and had a day out themselves, be it Briley Henry, Letitia McKenna, Lourdes Bosch, Mariana Speckmeyer. I mean, is there a case here that they're just going to have the most votes, but a very even spread of votes?
Well, of course, because when you've got that many players firing and finding the back of the net, it's a pretty tough one to choose. But Holly McNamara is hard to look past.
It is a tough one to look past. And the only thing that got me off there is obviously she came into the league late as well, with returning from injury. And just the fact that Melbourne City will have shared those points in plenty of rounds.
Well, let's have a little look at the fixtures for the weekend, because this is knockout football. Elimination finals are upon us. The Central Coast Mariners at home up in Gosford, up against Canberra United. That's the first of the two games kicking off on Sunday afternoon. This one, Adelaide United at home, Cooper Stadium as well, is going to be an excellent matchup up against Western United. That kick-off 4 p.m. on 10 Play and Paramount Plus. That's all from us on Dub Zone for today. Stick around because this weekend finals, huge fixtures coming up, and we'll see you next week for more Dub Zone action.